once again with writer-director Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Ben.
Paul's film, One Battle After Another, out today. Definitely worth seeing. It's very good. Congratulations.
Thanks, Ben.
There is a clip in your film of Leonardo DiCaprio watching the Battle of Algiers from 1966, which is the movie that Paul has picked for us to have next.
Yeah, it's a stone cold classic. But for our hero, Leo, watching it, it's kind of like... I think it was a very popular thing in the 60s, sort of these guerrilla movements, you know, there was sort of a lot of references, whether the Weather Underground. The Battle of Algiers was kind of...
Yeah, it's like their blueprint.
It was their blueprint.
Yeah.
And so...
That's what Jimmy Breslin was talking, that was his criticism of it, that it's like a...
Is that right?
He said, this is a training film for anarchists, you know.
Right. Well, you know, I imagine, you know, if you were part of that revolution and you got out and you're kind of living in a cabin in the woods in relative safety, and you don't have anything to do, you'd probably put on the Battle of Algiers for the 900th time.
That's right.
And relive the old days, and that's what he's doing in the movie when he watches the film.
So first time I saw this movie, your jaw drops at what you're seeing. This is a documentary style, certainly. It has a Italian neo-realism, massive influences there. Almost exclusively, I think all but one actor, Jean Martin, as the French general, is a local.
I think so.
Yeah.
But don't get it wrong. Like, there's pseudo-documentary stuff, and then there's this. You really have to kind of check yourself and think, am I sure that this isn't a documentary, you know, because the camera movement and the way that the story unfolds, it feels so authentic. And yeah, it's
about the years from 54 to 57 and the Algerian fight for independence, and the guerrilla movement that got the French to leave Algeria, and then eventually the country became independent.
That's right.
Yeah.
The first time I ever heard of it was Jonathan Demme talking about it. I was obsessed with him, still am. He made mention of it. I must have been about 16 years old. I said, well, I'll check out Battle of Algiers. Yeah. And, you know, the rest is history. You just kind of can't believe it. And you look into Pontecorvo. Burn is another great film that he made.
Yeah, Burn's great.
You know, but it's funny. You know, I don't know why I would have thought it was a documentary. I mean, it says Ennio Morricone did the music in the opening credits. You know, so but still, it's a lot of it.
With Pontecorvo, he did the music.
With Pontecorvo, that's right.
Yeah.
You know, but I think here's the difference. Really, it's like it's one thing to have a shaky handheld camera, but it's the actors. So many of the performers are non-professional actors, and they're just people either recreating experiences that they've had, bringing their faces and their life to the movie. That's what makes it sing, you know.
Yeah, you can't believe that these people are not professional actors.
I know.
So many of them are really, really good. And totally believable. This is about a guerrilla movement. I mean, this is about a terrorist organization that won the war with France to knock them out. But which we also learned, there was, which is true, maybe the specific crime committed here is not true, but there was a group of connected to the French intelligence called, I think, the Red Hand, however you say that in French. I don't do French. It's the one language I don't even try.
Yeah.
Jean Martin is as far as I'll go. And their job was to, strike first at the terrorists. And in fact, we see a scene that is incredibly powerful in the film where they plant a bomb outside a guy who they think is a suspect in an attack, but they don't even really know. And they blow up the whole house, the whole apartment building, killing dozens of people, including children.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly violent movie.
Incredibly.
You know, and there's no end to it. If somebody blows up, they're going to blow somebody else up. And it just goes back and forth. And it sort of, that becomes the plot. And so the absurdity and the ridiculousness of human nature and behavior is kind of laid out pretty bare.
But Pontecorvo, yes, there's the back and forth pointlessness to it, except Pontecorvo is taking a side. By far, most of the humanity is given to the Algerians and not to the French, except right before they're killed, right? Except for the victims there. That's when we get the rare close-ups on the French. Otherwise, they're just sort of nameless cops, right?
Yeah, Jean Martin gives a lot of humanity to this guy who's got
with the exception of Jean Martin, right?
You know, I mean, he's interesting.
I meant the French civilians.
The French civilians, certainly. Yeah. But Jean Martin brings a kind of couple other layers to that, rather than just being this kind of Darth Vader type figure who's going to come in and clean house, you know. It's complicated.
Yeah. Back with writer-director Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul's film, One Battle After Another, out now in theaters. There is a brief moment where Leonardo DiCaprio is watching the Battle of Algiers. This is the Bible for revolutionaries of how to win a guerrilla war against a colonial visiting power.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, the #1 most watched film from any of those groups that we certainly got into looking into. There's Weather Underground, Black Panthers, that kind of thing. I mean, this was their film. This was the film that they admired, they idolized, and they looked to. Obviously there was a lot of movements of people to Algiers once they had to flee this country. Sort of revolutionaries hiding out in Algiers became a destination. Late '60s, early '70s.
After they won independence.
That's right.
But that scene early on, as it lets you know that some of these movements were inexorably tied to fundamentalist religion, right? There's a moment where he's letting us know that the guys you're about to cheer for may not be guys you actually want to spend much time with.
Yeah, that's right. He's a pretty well-rounded filmmaker. He's looking at all sides of it. It's not just one agenda.
Right, even though his sympathies obviously lie with the revolution, he's not blind to what the leaders of the revolution are capable of.
That's right. A movie that has so much violence that you do see, where he decides what to show you and what not to show you. That's how he navigates that story.
Yeah. So your film is shot in VistaVision.
Yeah.
For people who don't know about formats, you might be talking to one. What does that mean?
Well, VistaVision was a format that was invented to try to figure out how to use more of a larger portion of the 35mm camera negative. So in other words, bigger is better. Bigger
is better. Paramount. It was Paramount's.
Paramount came up with it. I think White Christmas was the first movie, that shot VistaVision. But the list is pretty long of movies that you probably really liked looking at. The Searchers is certainly one of them. But Hitchcock used it a lot. It gives you a very deep, rich, beautiful image. It's not entirely practical. It's not as easy as shooting with a regular 35mm camera. It comes with some
So it's a
problems.
special kind of camera.
It's a special, good old-fashioned camera, and it went out of fashion sometime, I think, in the maybe early '60s. It's sort of, One-Eyed Jacks. Marlon Brando used it for that, and then it kind of went out of fashion, and it became something that was used for visual effects. And the reason why, like a lot of the special effects for Star Wars were shot with a VistaVision camera, and the reason why it was such a beautiful, rich negative, back in the old days, you had to do these opticals. So by the time you put all those spaceships and lasers and things shooting, you kind of wore your negative down, but it would still hold up because the negative was so deep and rich. So
you could shoot on that VistaVision camera, but you didn't have to show the whole film in VistaVision. That you could then.
That's right. That's right. So back in the old days, you would go to Radio City Music Hall and you could see a print projected in VistaVision of The Searchers, and it would probably be like eating a beautiful, sumptuous meal and asking for seconds. I think it's a really beautiful, beautiful format.
We're not going to be together to introduce this movie, but I imagine it's not just that The Searchers was shot in VistaVision that you thought it was important to show tonight, but also that this is a massively flawed hero. The many protagonists you have in your film are they're not perfect.
No, they're not perfect, but hopefully they're dramatic.
Well, they're dramatic, yeah.
The Searchers, I don't know what I could say about The Searchers that hasn't been said. It is a deep and heavy movie, and it has race on its mind. It has America on its mind. And besides all that, it has John Wayne giving one of the great performances you're ever going to see. It's something else because there's enough weight to the story to support his stature as a man, as an actor, and there's enough on John Ford's mind as a deeply flawed person himself to really make just a really beautiful movie and a kind of indescribable feeling of emotion that I get when I watch the film. And you just keep making films struggling to try to get one of those.